Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome. It's a pleasure having you with us today. And like we say in Kinyarwanda, murakaza neza, which means welcome. We're delighted to have you. This is a very important conversation or conversations that we are about to have. What we are doing today is having the EU Digital Global Gateway, and the focus is going to be on an open internet to all. I am Isabel Masozera. I am a newscaster at RBA, which is the national broadcaster, and I'm honored to be your host this morning. Now, before we get started, I would like to acknowledge our hosts today. We have a lovely gentleman who's made sure that you're settling in okay, enjoying your breakfast, and in a great ambience. Mr. Kanesa Nasa, please come and say hello.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, all protocols observed. First of all, I'd like to welcome you to the Digital Transformation Center, Rwanda. Some of you who do not know this space, it's an initiative from the German government in partnership with the government of Rwanda. So we are working in this space under the GIZ with our very lovely implementing partners at the Ministry of ICT. And what we do in this lovely space here is we don't just meet, we actually do other things. We work on policies, we bring the community together to innovate. We also build digital solutions for the government of Rwanda, but then we also use this to piggyback and digitize other communities in Africa. So we don't do this alone. We work with several partners, the Smart Africa Initiative. We run with also other government institutions like Rwanda Information Society Agency. And basically in a heartbeat, what we do in this space is we create all the efforts in Rwanda that are required to digitize and digitally transform the nation. We are actually very, very honored to have you all here for the EU Digital Global Gateway. This is actually something very interesting to us as well, because most of the things that we do require connectivity and also free movement of information, democratization of capital, and also a proper, vibrant ecosystem. So without further ado, I'm actually honored to have you all here on behalf of the Ministry of ICT and the GIZ. Thank you. I hope you have a productive session and enjoy.
Thank you, Mr. Kaneza, for those wonderful warm remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start by giving you a snapshot of what you'll be expecting during this session. This morning, we will be beginning with remarks from Peter Marien, in charge of digital governance at European Union's Directorate General for Communications Networks, Content and Technology. That will also be followed by the second intervention that will be facilitated by Mr. Wim Degezele, the technical expert of the EU-funded project for promotion of the open internet. We'll also be having key remarks from Dr. Thomas Zelka, who is the head of division for national and international standardization policy in the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Climate Action. We will also be having another speaker that will be Mr. Thomas Lemonauskas, who is the Envision Associate Managing Partner, and we will also be having a Q&A session. So you have an opportunity to participate. It will be interactive. We'll have a microphone going around, and you have a chance to ask. Ladies and gentlemen, without wasting any more time, allow me hand over to our first speaker of the day. Mr. Peter Marien, you're welcome.
Good morning, everybody. Excellencies, distinguished guests, thank you very much for being here. These opening remarks were scheduled to be made by another person who couldn't make it, so I have the pleasure to improvise some introduction. First of all, thank you also to our hosts, of course, in this case GIZ and BMZ, thank you very much. I think this is an excellent example of what we are trying to do in Europe as a Team Europe approach to cooperation. So I am working at DG INTPA, International Partnerships at the Commission in Brussels, working on digital governance. Of course, this is a side event to this important ITU WTDC conference. And I want to thank you also, of course, for our ITU colleagues who are present here. And of course, underline the important presence of Thomas Zilke and Thomas Lamanauskas, who will be speaking later, also in this context of this important environment. So today we will be talking about open internet, important topic for all of us, a very wide topic. I will be starting with an introduction on the global gateway, and then Wim de Gezelle will be digging in a bit deeper into the topic of the open internet. And of course, thank you very much indeed for all of you who might have traveled from far. I think this is an excellent opportunity indeed to meet here in Kigali and to have this opportunity to discuss face to face. So now let me try to get some slides on the screen. Oh, I'll leave it like this size? Or shall I make it bigger? Okay, good. Great. Okay, so the Global Gateway. The Global Gateway is actually the name of a communication which was issued by the European Union in December 2021. And it constitutes an offer to partner with countries around the world to accelerate their twin transitions. And this twin transition is digital and green. It's important for us to make this link between the green and the digital transition. Now, of course, today I focus on digital. This goes beyond digital, and I will come back to this. What is important in the Global Gateway, as it sits amongst other initiatives around the world, is that the Global Gateway offers a sustainable approach to development and to infrastructure needs. And this is quite important. So this is not just about providing money or investment opportunities, but it actually comes with certain principles. And I will come back to this later. The communication is anchored in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs, and also the Paris Agreement on climate change. Now, the Global Gateway in its communication and the surrounding communication mentions some amounts. Global amount the EU is envisaging is mobilization of 300 billion, so that's with a B, 300 billion euro, of which 150 billion to Africa. So that's the ambition. And this money is not just grant money. This takes into account private sector investments, which we hope to attract and mobilize through our tools. So there are some innovative financing tools that have been created lately, such as, for example, European External Action Guarantee. And this guarantee, as you can imagine, functions, let's say, as a guarantee, and so the idea is to de-risk certain investments and thereby make investments possible, which were previously not impossible. And there are other tools as well, more traditional tools. So, as I said, the offer of the Global Gateway is to have a sustainable approach, and this is based on some principles. And I will now move to these principles. Okay. First is, well, I'll go through them like this. First principle is that this is based on democratic values and high standards. So the Global Gateway is a value-based model, and this means that investments are in line with the rule of law, human rights, and international norms. And we sometimes, when we discuss with our international partners and so on, remind ourselves of you know, the Charter on Human Rights and also in the European Union, but also United Nations fundamental charters. And so we do find it important that what we do is based on that. Good governance and transparency. So when it comes to procurement, for example, or general transparency on what we do try to set the standard high when it comes to transparency and good governance. Equal partnerships. There has been a shift in the last years into the approach of the European Union in its work abroad, and the Global Gateway reflects this in the sense that we are looking for partnerships. That means we want to work in the interest of our partner countries, but also in the EU's interest. And this is something, this is a little bit a shift to how things were done previously. Green and clean. So it is important that we support our partners, but also the EU is doing this ourselves to speed up our green transition and to move to a circular economy. And for example, when we talk about digital, this means that if we discuss data centers, it is important for us that these data centers are state of the art with regards to energy or, let's say, carbon footprint. As one of many examples. Some of our development finance institutions, for example, can only provide loans if certain criteria are met with regards to environmental impact, or again, carbon impact. And then finally, or not finally, security, yes. So security focused. So the Global Gateway, as I mentioned, treats different sectors, 6 sectors, and one of them, the main one is digital. When we talk about digital, it's I think less complicated to explain why this is important, but just a few top points on this. So when we talk about security in the context of digital and the Global Gateway, we link this to digital sovereignty. Yeah? So without, of course, being, I mean, in a positive way. It's important that data is managed in a way where you know, countries, states, or other actors don't lose their sovereignty, and this comes hand in hand with security. As you may know, EU is a big promoter of data privacy and an environment in which we know that data is protected at all times. On the other hand, we are also a big promoter of open data and data governance models which allow data to be used for economic and social progress. So security is not only about locking things up, it's also about opening things in a way that they can be properly used. Of course, this is difficult. In digital, this is about physical security, this is about cyber security. This also touches, of course, on the topic of open internet. Again, I'll leave this later to Wim to discuss these topics. This is related to regulations and, again, to data protection. As a, for example, technical detail, the EU has what we call 5G cybersecurity toolbox. This is not about 5G only, this is about cybersecurity, despite the name. And so this toolbox is used by ourselves and our European partners when we are assessing investments in digital. And so, for example, the 5G toolbox discusses things such as supplier diversification and network security. Okay. Next. Okay, so these are the investment priorities of the Global Gateway. I won't go into too much detail on this slide, because since we're focusing on digital, which is a priority, key priority of the Commission at the moment, digital and green. As I said, we will be supporting physical infrastructure. We will be working on regulatory environment, very important, and on soft skills. So I won't go too much into that today, but there's a lot of work being done on these different topics. So actors. So we are, of course, not doing this alone. I started today by mentioning the Team Europe approach. There is a very substantial effort to work together in Europe with our member states and our partners. A lot of our programming today is done in the Team Europe approach. I mentioned earlier green data centers. So for example, with some of the colleagues that are here in the room, we are having intensive discussions, colleagues from member states, on a data program, for example, with Africa, not for, but with, for Europe and Africa. And the Team Europe approach there, for example, is very real. This is not, and this is also for development financial institutions. Private sector, so we realize that without the private sector, our impact will certainly not be at the level that we want. So private sector is key. And when I was mentioning innovative tools before, this is also related to that. And then, of course, international like-minded partners. As you see them on the screen, there are regional and bilateral partnerships being set up at different levels. For example, here we say connectivity with Japan and India, but for example, we have a Latin American digital alliance as well, just to mention one. And then we also work with other international partners. Okay, focus a little bit more on digital. So, as I mentioned already, we're promoting a human-centric, well, I didn't use that word, but we're promoting a human-centric digital transformation. That means people are at the center. And again, this, I think, is some differentiation of other players around there. For us, this is important. And to give some examples, I mentioned the privacy of data, but that might sound abstract, but a concrete example there is, for example, electronic ID. If we're moving into electronic ID anywhere in the world, including in Europe, there are questions about privacy of this data. What do you do? How do you avoid abuse? Which can be very easy, yeah? If you have it in a database, you can do many things. So this is very practical. Artificial intelligence, considered by many a driver of the new industrial revolution, data and artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a force for good, but as also many forces for good, there's another angle to it, and we want to minimize possible risks of using AI. And so ethical AI, ethical aspects of AI are very important. And we are working concretely on this. So we have legislation in Europe, we have discussions ongoing with different partners, including United Nations agencies, on working on ethical AI. Closing the gender gap is key. Any program of the European Union that's being financed, including certainly in digital, has a gender aspect to it, which is real. So the gender divide is very important, and there are actually ways to tackle this. And then digital rights and principles. So the European Union has a communication in the works. There has been a public consultation worldwide on European Declaration on Digital Rights and Principles. And our job is to promote these rights and principles. So this is behind this first point. Safeguarding, it says here, Europe's digital sovereignty, but actually it should read Europe's and our partners' digital sovereignty. I mentioned a little bit about that before, so I won't go too much into that now. Tackling the global digital divide. So maybe just to mention that, of course, everything we do, we are a big promoter of the multilateral and rules-based world order. And we have organizations, of course, like the United Nations that have important guiding documents and principles that we also adhere to and which also tackle this global digital divide. So for example, you have the United Nations Roadmap on digital transformation, the Digital Compact. Of course, we also have many other guiding documents, but I'm just mentioning these as an example. And this means, for example, because today we're talking about open internet and we will be talking about connectivity, but of course it is much more, as you all know, than creating a physical or other connectivity to make bits and bytes move. As you may know, in many countries where there is a lack of internet usage, the problem is not access to internet, it's like physical access or coverage. It's about, for example, affordability or meaningful access, and access that let's say that's uncensored, that's open, or that is affordable. So we want to tackle those. The open and free internet I will leave to Wim Gezelle later. And this is of course linked to many of these topics. We want to promote EU services and assets across the globe. We're really fortunate, let's say, like this, to be at the front of the pack when it comes to Earth observation systems. So we have satellites up there that provide all kinds of data, and a lot, I would say, most of this data, for example, of the Copernicus system, is free and open to anybody. And this creates huge opportunities, whether it's for governance, let's say population census, or measuring what is growing where, and whether it is okay what is happening, let's say, if there's a drought, for example, or measuring climate impacts, pollution, fisheries. It's almost endless what you can do with this data. And we are promoting this around, this open and free access around the world. So very concretely, it's not just going to our partners and saying, hey, look, you can use the data. It's about setting up data centers. So in Latin America, for example, in Asia, we have concrete cooperation ongoing right now to set up data centers to better use this data locally, so they can download it and analyze it with local expertise, and we also build that local expertise. And to take a step further, there's this cable that the European Union co-financed between Europe and Latin America, and now we are looking to connect this also to Africa, which will allow faster access even to these different systems. And then we're fostering cooperation on research and digital innovation. I can talk very, very long about this. Let's see, I'll just maybe focus on digital skills and education. We have a whole team working on promoting research and innovation, and on also build, so on the one hand academically, for example, with Africa, we have very interesting projects already ongoing, such as Africa Connect, but we're also working on more fundamental research with the research institutions. On the other hand, we're also working on the innovation hubs and trying to together with Europe and Africa to build new economies, let's say, digital innovation hubs. Actually, one of our flagship programs will be also on that topic, and I think there are people in the room here who are working actively on this. I think if I'm taking too much time, please shout. I'm almost finished. Okay. We have this notion which you might hear of digital economy packages. So this is especially on a bilateral level when we engage with certain countries. We try to combine infrastructure with soft elements. So I've mentioned data today. So for example, when we want to talk about data centers, we want to link this to data governance, digital skills, and regulatory environment, just to give an example. And this is quite concrete. So we will not go into submarine cables if we don't talk about, for example, regulatory environment. I mean, in principle, of course. Again, to be more concrete. Thank you. I have to wrap up. So we have some studies ongoing and colleagues actively working on submarine cables, connecting Africa with Europe, land-based backbone infrastructure in Africa. As I mentioned, data infrastructure, this is actively ongoing. And of course, as I mentioned, maybe I didn't mention, but last mile connectivity, de-risking investments or incentivizing investments which might be less obvious. For example, we have a market failure. And I think I will wrap up there since I'm out of time, but I think I've covered most of it. Thank you very much. I'll pass to the next one.
Can we appreciate him once more? Thank you, sir, for that insightful, brief but insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, now we come to the part where we get to interact a little bit more with our theme today, which is an open internet to all. Please join me in welcoming. But before we do that, actually, I would like to take a moment and acknowledge the fact that we have an online audience, those that are streaming from all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us. I would like now to welcome the facilitator for the second intervention, Mr. Wim de Gezele, who once again is a technical expert of the EU-funded project promotion and development of the open internet in Africa. Now, he will be presenting the newly released report, The Open Internet for Growth, Building on Africa's Potential, that focuses on success, growth, and the potential of African markets, as well as drivers and challenges for the open internet. You're welcome.
Thank you, and good morning all. The moderator was worried that I escaped and I ran away, so because she didn't see me standing there already. Good morning all, and welcome. It's a pleasure for me to be here, and also a pleasure to see all of you. As mentioned in the introduction, my name is Wim de Gezele. I'm an expert in internet governance, and I have been working with a company, Stantec, that run a EU-funded project. Just have to coordinate my slides. So a EU-funded project to really promote the open internet. I really would like to mention here that in developing this project, which focused on the report I will talk about today, we also had the pleasure and the opportunity to be guided by a steering committee in which there are different stakeholders from the European Commission presented. Peter is one of the people that is part of the steering committee, but as you can see, there are other stakeholders, all from their different angle, giving us advice on how we can develop this project. As I said, I will be focusing on the report itself. You will get a copy on your way out. And actually, the story of the report starts with a presentation you just heard from Peter. It starts with a global gateway and with a specific quote in the global gateway communications, namely that investments in digital infrastructure, sorry for that, investment in digital infrastructure will also be linked with standards and protocols that support network security and resilience, interoperability, and an open, plural, and secure internet. And the EU will also promote access to the open internet, given its role as a key driver of innovation, social, political, economic, and cultural development. So as you see, this quote really represents a very strong commitment in the open internet as a driver for growth, the open internet as a technology that is fit for the future, that is fit to tackle current challenges. So this is really the start of our story. The start of our story, because we all know that the internet has known an unforeseen and unforeseeable growth, and probably unforeseeable growth before. The open internet is also recognized as a promoter of the Sustainable Development Goals, the goals of the African Union Agenda 2063, and many more documents and official projects. So what is now, in the first part of the report, we look in what is now the reason for the success of this open internet. We come back to its core. We come back to its core, the decentralized architecture that is built on stable open standards and protocols that are developed in consensus-driven processes. These standards, because of these standards and because of these processes, these standards are able to evolve and are able and have been able to create an internet that can grow, that can cope with innovation, that can cope with new people online, new devices online, and new developments. A second element in this architecture that is very important is its decentralized architecture, which allows to innovate locally. And thanks to this, it is possible to empower the local digital community and avoid dependencies on external or third parties or a central power within this architecture. Together with this architecture, there's also a multi-stakeholder internet governance model that, driven by global, regional, and national dialogues, has proven to be very effective, an effective system for making the internet evolve, and while at the meantime striving to keep the internet at the service of people-centered development. I mentioned some of the organizations you definitely know, but I really would like to focus also on the importance of national and regional local dialogues on internet governance. And the last point that's often forgotten, also because it's a bit complex if you talk about open and then think of open, immediately think and everything is possible. No, the open internet we know today and the way we deal with the open internet is not an open internet without rules. It is an internet where, thanks to democratic regulations and principles, they can be put in place regionally and nationally so that fundamental rights are respected, so that economic and political players are not interfere or avoid that they interfere with locally driven empowerment and development. And I think Peter also gave a number of examples of what the EU is developing in terms of regulation and approaches there. But we dive deeper in the report itself. Now going back to the report, and the central part of the biggest chunk of the report is actually asking the question and trying to answer the question from, well, we first looked at the open internet as a really strong tool to empower local development, of a tool in the hands of local communities. But how now can we make sure that this internet is being used? Or how can we make sure that the potential of this internet is fully being used? The report is really focusing on 5 key areas where we first try to make a state of play of what's happening and what is the state in different African countries and in the continent overall. Also look a little bit outside what's happening in Europe, to then come up with ideas for investments and partnership opportunities. Investment partnership opportunities that can be linked to the global gateway, but that also are there far beyond, also can be used in other contexts. So the idea of the report is not to come up with clear guidelines, clear recommendations. It's rather to come up with a list of possibilities that help to develop the open internet on the different elements. A list of possibilities that can again be adapted and prioritized depending on the local situation, the local needs, what local communities need. So as you see, I will not dive into the different elements because they're all, the slide just gives a flavor of what can be found in the report. But we have 5 important focus areas. One is digital infrastructures for open internet connectivity. We also look at enabling policy and regulatory environments and e-government initiatives. See what opportunities are there, what can be done, and how this can be linked, what initiatives can be linked to the open internet. We also focus on open internet skills and competences. What are now specific skills and competences that are needed to fully make use of the possibilities and the potential of this open internet? We look into the open internet related to economy, trade, innovation, and startups. And the last part, we also look at open internet and participation in open internet governance. Because we all know that while we fully support the open internet, we often hear specific from African countries that sometimes they feel not very well represented, not very active, or don't have the possibilities to participate in all dialogues. The report also looks into there, and again links it to different other elements. For example, there's a strong message we got in one of the conversations we had that immediately people think about funding travel to meetings, the language problem, but that there is also an important link with skills and competencies. For example, if you really want to get involved and send people to deal and to discuss the technical part of the internet, that's a question you need already have the people trained locally. So these are all links. And this is just an example to show how broad the report goes. So really trying to give an overview of different options that can be used to develop the open internet. That brings me to my concluding remarks, because I will not, if I dive deeper, then there's no way to stop me anymore. Concluding remarks of this project and also of the report is that we all know the digitalization is an unstoppable process. What will happen tomorrow, we will all know we will be more making use of technology, we will be more connected, etc. However, the open internet is not and should not be taken for granted. Not be taken for granted. It was already mentioned before. There are ideas coming up with alternative, more closed models that come up now and then. There's also a need really to invest in the right opportunities because while connecting people, providing access is a key to bring people to the internet, there is more needed to really make people fully make use of the potential and the possibilities of the open internet. So comprehensive open internet approaches have proven in the past that they are the best way to fully harness digital technology's potential for growth, development, and democratization and local empowerment. And the last element, the last concluding remark is that these approaches should really cover elements from all the 5 different parts or areas we discuss in the report. So thank you very much. This was my introduction of the report. Like I said, you will be handed a copy of the report that was very nicely printed locally here on the way out. And a digital version of the report will come available in 2 weeks from now, because this was really the first time we presented the report. Nobody else has seen it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Degezele. Just to reiterate his words, we do have a copy for you if you're curious to learn more from that informative session. I would love now to hand over to our next speaker for key remarks, Dr. Thomas Zilker, who is the Director, Office for National and International Standardization Policy, Germany. You're welcome.
Good morning. Excellencies, dear colleagues, good morning everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the Commission for hosting this event. I think it's very important, it comes timely. Because in the face of global challenges, ranging from rising food prices to the climate change and also questions of digital sovereignty, it goes without saying, these issues are too complex for one party alone. They need to be solved together, including developing countries and emerging markets and the civil society. The Global Gateway Strategy is a bold initiative, bringing together various partners and tackling important topics to the audience. And it's about security, technical standards, and access for all, because 50% of humanity, as we have heard repeatedly, has no access to the internet and is thus structurally cut off and excluded from opportunities and possibilities of the digital transformation. However, the need for digital transformation to achieve the goals that we have, in particular the Sustainable Development Goals, and also the green transition is becoming increasingly clear, but without widespread, affordable and thus open internet, the digital transformation will increase existing development gaps for entire regions and inequalities between people. Leave no one behind is the claim of the German and European value-oriented international cooperation, and also the guiding principle behind the Global Gateway strategy. To ensure that the digital transformation benefits everyone, the remaining digital gaps, especially in internet access, must be closed. In order to increase access for as many people as possible, German Development Cooperation is already active in a number of existing initiatives through the Small Africa Digital Academy Partnership, the World Bank, Smart Africa, and Germany are working together to develop and implement a regulatory capacity building program to ensure stronger, inclusive digital transformation in the region. I would also like to highlight the Partner to Connect Digital Coalition of the ITU, a multi-stakeholder alliance to promote meaningful connectivity and digital transformation in the hardest to connect communities. We are proud to be a part of this coalition and to also contribute with a pledge here in Kigali and at the WTDC, and this is going to be tomorrow. This leads me to the unique role the ITU may take in this effort. The ITU is uniquely positioned to support its member states, the business community, and other stakeholders from the Global South in their efforts to implement an internet serving to all. This will require more members and more creativity from the corporate sector, from all member countries, especially from the Global South. Small and big companies are able to design and build innovative solutions to foster this goal. Finally, I'd like to point out the important role of technical standards in the support of digital inclusion and the overall development of local ecosystems. Standards have an essential role to play in making an open internet a reality by encouraging innovation and technology development and fostering trust through world-class consensus-based technical rules. Countries of the Global South, and I pointed out this as the WSIS in Geneva last week, that to benefit the local trade and contribute to a growing digital trade worldwide. Though those countries of the Global South can benefit significantly from participating in setting these standards. And that is, by the way, the reason why the government has nominated me as a candidate for the ITUT position as Director of Standardization Bureau. But this is also meaning they harness the benefits of standardization for sustainable development. International standardization bodies need to make the perspective of developing countries a priority. And we should work together with all the other organizations on the same level playing field because consensus-based standardization is the one that will solve these problems at the end and perfectly combine to the open internet idea. In conclusion, to successfully promote access to the open internet and to drive innovation and economic growth, we need to foster partnerships as equals. The Global Gateway strategy is a great step in this direction, building bridges between countries while acknowledging their autonomy. I am looking forward to working towards this course together with you, and I'm looking forward to the discussion as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zilka. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now getting to our last key remarks. And before I actually invite our last speaker, due to last-minute inconvenience, we regrettably inform you that His Excellency, the Ambassador of France, will not be joining us. But that just means we have a little bit more time for you to interact, network, and just get to know a little bit more about what each other does. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and help me welcome Mr. Thomas Lemanauskas, who is the Envision Associates Managing Partner, Lithuania.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, not a big fan of lecterns, but hopefully, being the last speaker, you'll allow me a bit less formality here as well. So, first of all, really grateful for organizers of this event for the opportunity to be here. Thank you, Peter for giving us a great overview of global gateway strategy, as well as Wim of explaining us what the open internet is and how it can benefit all of us. And of course, recognition to Thomas as a, as a Minitalk fellow candidate from European Union country for ITU. We're not competitors, just kind of disclaimer. So of giving great remarks here as well. So just for me to start with, a little bit of a context, So we say global gateway, we say you invest. Why it's important? What is the context of the recent few years? First of all, it was already mentioned a little bit by Peter, is we really recognize in the last few years the importance of digital infrastructure, connectivity, and the use of it. So I think now no one needs to be convinced, but we have statements from Secretary General Guterres' Our Common Agenda, that says, let's connect everyone. We have G20 saying, let's connect everyone. So really we see importance of that. Another thing, this funny twist of fate, COVID-19 had created financial and economic environment, which actually was pretty conducive for investments in digital infrastructure. The low interest rates, a lot of economic stimuli, as well as rather uncertain markets, created a lot of opportunities for investments in digital infrastructure and investor interests in there. And the last but not least, technological developments that are now also being commercialized from new technologies in mobile networks to low Earth orbit satellites, middle Earth orbit satellites that provide us new means of connectivity. So these are positive things. But we also have some challenges. First of all, and I'll lead there, is that all the good things are not equally distributed. And while we have a lot of investments in Europe, in North America, some way Latin America, some regions are really left behind still. And, especially the region we're here now, in Africa region, the private sector investment from digital infrastructure funds, private equity funds are still, rather small compared to other regions. Second is also the economic environment is changing. So now if you see, those who invest in stocks have not been very happy in the last few months, I think, last few weeks were not too bad, but that's still probably doesn't compensate much. So, and you see that, the really rising interest rates, the record high inflation, and really combines to make the market very different at the moment. And we see from some consultancy reports that in the first quarter of this year, the value in telecoms deals dropped by half compared to the last year. So we have a challenge. And we also have this existential challenge, climate crisis. So we have the World Meteorological Organization recent reports say the last 7 years were the warmest of the record. And in the next 5 years, there's a 50-50 chance the next 5 years, the Earth will be warmer by 1.5 degrees, so that dreaded line. So what do we do about that? And there's good things, challenging things. So of course, governments, it's great to see the national governments are doing the good things already. So if you talk about European Union, out of response and recovery funds, 20% need to be allocated to digital, and that's a big amount of money of $750 billion, euros, sorry, in the right currency. But also, and that's where I'm coming now to Global Gateway, it's great to see global solidarity rising. And it's a big amount of money, 300 billion euros, 150 billion for Africa, really making sure that everyone is connected, and to make sure that we'll live up to that dogma that no one can be connected fully until everyone is connected, because we only can be connected if we're all together. National governments also living up, and I'm not stealing thunder from Lithuanian Deputy Minister, but she will be speaking in Partner Connect session just in an hour or so, I think, about Lithuanian commitments as well in this regard, and I welcome you to listen to that. And then, but the thing, and that brings me to the last point about partnerships in a global ecosystem, And, then Thomas already mentioned the importance of ITU, so an importance of working between the, let's say, bilateral or regional initiatives such as European Union, Global Gateway, and others, and organizations such as ITU that provide platforms for what I'm borrowing from Peter's presentation for equal partnership. And for me, that's exactly what organizations like ITU give, that platform for equal partnership. I'm really grateful for European Union recognizing the strategic importance of such organizations. And I'm standing in front of you here not only because I'm Lithuanian and Lithuanian candidate for ITU Deputy Secretary General position, but because European Union has come together, and I have to very proudly say so, and agreed to support me as a European Union for Deputy Secretary General role as well in this role. And I think that also shows not only a political statement, but also strong commitment to the global collaboration. So with that, I really thank you very much everyone here. Really great to be here and witnessing that great partnership between the regions and between Europe and Africa, but also witnessing the great partnership between regional initiatives and platforms like you. Thank you very much all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's appreciate him one more time. I feel like that was the session that got us in the right mood to get into our Q&A. Are we ready to ask some questions? Do we have some, or did they exhaust everything we needed to know? Yeah? I see some smiles. That's reassuring. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to welcome back to the stage and ask our panelists to please come and have their seats. Dr. Thomas Zilka, and yes, please come have a seat. Okay. A very proactive room. Thank you so much. Please have your seats. We'll now have a microphone go around, and in case you have a question, feel free to direct it to one of our panelists. Do we have anybody? I have a lovely gentleman at the back. Your names, please, and then you can let us know the question. You can as well come use mine. Thank you. If that's okay with you, you could come and use this microphone. Okay.
So thank you very much to have the floor. My name is Johann Groß from Germany, Ministry for Digital and Transport. I have one question to Wim de Gezel. Thank you for your presentation. I have two questions, by the way, if I'm allowed to, but I'll make it very brief. We talk about the open internet, and open internet, we have several players in the market to realize an open internet. And how would you define open internet from a network operator's point of view, because they deliver the infrastructure, and from a service provider point of view, who realize the internet access for the residential and business customers? And the second question is, on slide 8, you had the statement to strengthen the African participation in the global multi-stakeholder processes. So if you could elaborate it, let's say, by using one very important multi-stakeholder process, and how would you like to see the African participation in these processes? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let me take this one. That's a lot of questions. Let me start with the last one. I think I already gave a hint on how to strengthen Africa's participation, for example, in the discussion on the ITF. And that would already start with looking locally and making sure that you have the train the engineers and raise interest in the topics and in really those technical building blocks, so that they can jump in and play their role in those processes. But I think that also counts larger if you look at processes. For example, for example, the IGIHE. You need to create the interest in them first at the national level. If you really don't talk about them, or there is no awareness that they exist, then people will not be interested to join and will not be interested to participate. And that's why I think during the presentation, I also mentioned specifically dialogues that are happening already at different national level or regional levels. So the second question you ask on really the different open internet from the different operators' perspective, that's I think even more tricky. Definitely for me to answer, I mean. One thing we try to do with the report is really making the difference between, on the one hand, the discussion on everything that has to deal with internet architecture, really the basic building blocks, and make sure that this is not diluted with any other discussion. That's clearly said from, okay, there is that architecture, and all the other elements, for example, from the other players in this field, are basically talking about other very important related stuff, but not talking about the basics of the open internet. And then if you look at initiatives from, for example, operators, yeah, there is a lot, I mean, there is a lot to say there. Don't want to go into detail, but for example, one of the things that was mentioned already before was the affordability. I think they have an important role to play there to help to make the internet access affordable for the people in the room. And I'm very, very aware that probably I now answered 10% of the whole field of your questions cover. But I see that some of the other panelists want to answer.
Yeah. I think this is working. All right, thanks a lot. Just a couple of comments in here. First of all, when we talk about internet, we need to understand that these days there's a lot of layers of infrastructure. And still sometimes in the global policy discussions, we focus on the connectivity itself, like submarine cables, satellites, connecting. But I think also we need to realize how important is the data center infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, especially when you're talking about the regions. And this is still lacking. We used to have an issue where the submarine cables had to go to, if you talk about Latin America, to Miami to come back. Like in Africa, you had to go back, like connect to Paris or Amsterdam to go back to Africa. I think now it's being resolved. But data center infrastructure, local, regional cloud infrastructure is not there yet, and I think there's a lot more investments are needed. So creating all those, and CDN infrastructure, like reliable CDN infrastructure. So creating those all layers of infrastructure to really support the, let's say, not only open internet overall, but also the self-sufficient internet, let's say, and closed internet in the regions. The second thing, when we talk about participation, I think that one thing I've learned from my experience, including in the countries like Vanuatu, helping develop national steep strategies, is you have to merge local expertise with international experiences. So you cannot just helicopter the experience and helicopter knowledge. You have to really have a homegrown knowledge and then supplement that with the international. I sometimes say international consultants and international experts are very good in asking questions, but the answers need to be local, and I think that's only then we can build. And the last thing, and sometimes I see also international organizations who don't fully realize that when we implement projects, we also not only need to think about the project itself, but the impact of the global, broader ecosystem in the country. For example, how we build a national ICT infrastructure and national ICT ecosystem. So we don't only build network, but we build network by local entrepreneurs, the network with the support of local experts, with the support of local firms. And that sometimes means very practical things. Maybe the project shouldn't be like that big in the beginning and should be suitable for the local companies to pick up, Because only then these projects will be sustainable, only then there'll be African project for Africa supported, let's say, by European money and by European support, but not like something that we just, give to someone, but something that someone builds for themselves. Thanks a lot.
If I may, thank you. Thank you, Thomas. Well, I just want to add a few thoughts because something had been said already. We have talked about affordability, which I would like to take up. This is very important for emerging societies. Affordability and access as such is a very important factor for open internet. But we also have to see the point from the user perspective. We have the consumers, we have the providers, and we have also the business community that relies on the open internet because they have to perform payments back and forth, so that requires rules and regulation as well in terms of cybersecurity, for example, and also a certain grade of regulation with respect, for example, as the EU Digital Service Act just has pointed out, that everything that is illegal in the real world should also be illegal in the digital world. So all I'm saying here is open internet does not mean an area of rule-free and lawless exhibition. Of course, we can talk about that things that, for example, Timothy Wu, the advisor to the US president, has pointed out once, the net neutrality. I would not go as far and say it is a internet neutrality that we need. We need value-oriented running of the internet, which still remains open for all and which gives all the opportunities, in particular to the developing world. That's from my side. Thanks.
Thank you very much. In this context, I'd like to pick up one of the things that Wim in his presentation mentioned, which is that the open internet should not be taken for granted. And what we find important in this context, and specifically in the context of internet governance, is the multi-stakeholder approach. From the European Union point of view, this is something we are actively promoting. For example, we have been working with internet governance training, internet governance schools in Africa, also with the African Union Commission. And we plan to continue doing that, also with civil society. So we are right now in the process of designing a program where we want to work with civil society specifically on these topics, to build local, well, build in a cooperative way, of course, knowledge there where it might be lacking, so that, for example, the Global South can have a voice, understands these processes, and have a meaningful engagement. I mentioned civil society, but this could also be other actors, of course, in governments. And we are also discussing with ITU, for example, and UNDP on a capacity building program, also which might tackle some of these elements. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, do we have one more question? Thank you so much. We have somebody at the back.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, very good morning to everyone. I'm Amr Safwat. I'm from the Ministry of Communications and IT of Egypt. First of all, of course, I wish to thank the GIZ and Digital Transformation Center in Rwanda for organizing this. Really, I'm honored to be in this event, and thank you so much to the EU Commission for the strategy and for rolling out the strategy. Well, I've got 3 questions, but they're very brief, so I won't take that long. First of all, it has to do, the second and the third 2 questions, they have to do with the terminologies. But the first one, it has to do with the objective of the global gateway. You mentioned in the first presentation that one of the objectives of the global gateway is to work on the regulatory aspect. So is it in coordination with the PRIDA project? You know, there's a PRIDA project, which is the Policy Regulatory Initiative for Digital Africa, which is an EU-funded project in cooperation with the AU, with the African Union. So this project was rolled out, it was 2018, and we're in the second phase of it now. So it has to do with, basically, it's the main objective of this project is to harmonize or to enhance the harmonization of policies and regulatory authorities in Africa. So is it in coordination with the PRIDA project, or that will be have a different track? So that's my first question. My second two questions, the second and third one, they have to do with terminologies. When you talk about free internet, not open internet, but free internet, so this term is a very broad term. So what do you mean by the word free internet? Is it if you just talk to anyone on the street and tell him free internet, he will just, the first thing that will pop up in his mind is it's with no cost. It's like 0 cost. So of course, this is not the meaning that we are talking about. But free internet, and at the same time, you mentioned that it's really important to have the data protection and the protection of personal data and privacy as well, and not to be taken as granted as a free internet. So that's my question about the terminology of free internet. And the third one has to do with digital transformation. One of the objectives is fostering digital transformation. Again, digital transformation, it's a huge term, it's a broad term, it's very broad. It has to do with a lot of aspects. So the authors of this strategy, did they have in mind which categories they will be tackling in order to reach the digital transformation strategy at the end in Africa? So basically with 3 questions, and thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Can we please have that microphone come back to the panelists? I think it's a little bit more handy.
Yeah, this one works.
That one works okay? Please, go right ahead.
If I may do a kick-off, but I think there will be more aspects that could...
Just a minute, can we all hear what he's saying?
Yeah.
Yeah? No?
Well,
Okay.
that's what's a threefold. Should I better take this? Okay, thanks. Thank you. That was a threefold question that requires a very long answer, but I will skip that and just share a few very brief thoughts. First of all, the regulatory collaboration, I cannot say that much about the processes here, but I think it is an action that can only be applauded because the regulatory environment should be as sound and as overall as possible worldwide. That is our idea of good regulation, so that everyone can rely on good regulation. So this collaboration can only be supported. With regard to free internet, I think we are all quite clear about that free internet is like free Wi-Fi. It comes always with a price, right? So you would get data or other things that would have to be transferred. It is, I think it would be way too short just to say that is something that comes free of cost. So free internet means if you imagine a road where you can drive on, it does not matter what kind of goods you are driving and carrying, but there are still rules, and there shall be rules. For example, if there are dangerous goods on that road, then you need regulation for that. And I think if you limit that free internet to that aspect, then you will probably have a very good free internet one day. And the third one is the digital transformation into the internet. I think there is really very important that we further on tackle the issue that we had in our speeches. Of course, the transformation cannot be one-sided. We have to have no one leave behind, as we said. So this transformation shall also be interoperable with all different devices. So I think there's other colleagues who want to add.
I'd like for us to keep our responses short. We're running out of time, but please do go ahead.
Sure, I'll just stick to one of the three questions in this case, because I think it refers maybe better to me on PRIDA. So in Global Gateway, we want to have these partnerships, as I mentioned, of course also with the African partners. Africa has their Africa Digital Transformation Strategy, which we use as a guidance for what we are doing. Part of the vision there is digital single market, and part of the way to get there is on harmonization of policies and regulation. And PRIDA was an initial good example of how we can work on that. PRIDA was working also on other topics as internet governance. And so some of the work of PRIDA will be continued in different formats, and there's also discussion now on PRIDA itself. So yeah, it fits in the global picture. I hope this gives an answer. Thank you.
Just very quickly. So thank you very much again for questions. So first of all, regarding PRIDA, I probably want to proudly say that ITU is also a proud member of PRIDA, and that's another good example of collaboration between European Union and ITU together with African Union, so especially on the radio spectrum harmonization, and I think that only highlights the importance, and thank Peter for this talk about synergies, that we need to collaborate and really find synergies between different initiatives and not duplicate. So I know in ITU as well, there was also look how to combine other initiatives with initiatives like PRIDA that are happening in the same region to really boost their actual delivery. So the second, free internet, especially when we talk about the cost, we still need to realize that around 90% of people who are unconnected are actually covered by internet. So digital infrastructure is one part of the answer, but of course affordability and other aspects also as important. So I think, and it's great to see as well in Peter's presentation, it wasn't only about infrastructure, it was about soft elements as well, and I think they are as important. And finally, on digital transformation, I think it's very important that priorities are not one template priorities, but that priorities on a country-by-country basis. And maybe sometimes sarcastically say we have these sometimes consultancy projects where a consultant flies in and in 1 week they produce national ICT strategy or national digital roadmap, and usually exactly the same from country to country, and that's not the way to do it. And I think the way to do it is when we talk with within the local partners, local ecosystem, multi-stakeholder approach locally as well, where the real priorities are identified, not only in terms of what's important, but also what's achievable. And also a lot of examples is sometimes we can have wishful thinking, a lot of priorities, but we need to focus what we can achieve fast and what will make a meaningful difference in the country using that digital infrastructure foundation that we're building. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can I have Wim have the microphone? I know we're out of time. I'm not going to ask you to comment on what they've said, but I'd like you to have the parting shot on what you want the room to remember when it comes to internet that is open to all.
Okay. That's a difficult question. Wish you have told me that before. That's probably the most difficult. No. I would like to link it with one of the points I wanted to pick up on the from the last person that asked questions, and there's really that idea of the open internet and the free internet, because that's actually one of the most difficult things probably to explain, and we try to tackle that a little bit in the report, is how to combine it, how to say on one hand things are open, on the other hand say it's very good to regulate things, and I think the key point is that the idea we came to in the report of the open internet is really an internet that has to be very important and useful for the user and contribute and empower the local community. And from that perspective, it's easy to understand that if a local community decides that there is a need for regulations to be better using the internet, yes, of course, it's logic that there is room for regulation, that it's room for laws to help regulate the internet. But in the meantime, and even help to make sure that there is that freedom, because that's linked, it's important that those rules are coming from the local communities and not, like was mentioned in the slides, from external powers or from global economic players, for example. A second point that is very and should be immediately mentioned is that measures that are taken locally, whether it are legal measures or technical measures, should not break up the open internet. Because the moment you take local measures that actually break up and risk to lower the opportunities, for example, because you block the internet, because you don't make use of the openness of the internet, then you go wrong. So it's really a different, looking for an equilibrium, saying from how to come up with a regulation, with helping and empower the local communities, but in the meantime, making sure that the internet remains open, that the architecture remains there, and that all the possibilities that has been brought to us by this global network are still there for the future. And I think that's maybe a nice way to end the meeting.
I do agree, don't you? Do we agree? It is a good way to end. I want you to join me in thanking our panelists. Thank you so much for taking the time, not only to present, give remarks, but also to respond to the questions. I also want to thank the participants that were able to put across some questions. You can now have your seats, ladies and gentlemen. We have some refreshments for you, but shortly we will also be having shuttles available to take you to the convention center. I'll be coming back briefly before we come to the end of the event. For being great company, and to let you know that we do have the shuttles available and you can leave at your convenience. I'm Isabel Masozera, and it's been an honor serving as your Master of Ceremony. Have a wonderful day.